In fairness, the General was already having a bad day, and had known for several hours it would be his last. The Time War was coming to an end, and it wasn't going to be good. That morning, the warrior formerly known as the Doctor had left a message for the Daleks and Time Lords alike that the war was over for them all. The tone had sounded ominous, and the intent apocalyptic, especially as the Doctor had broken into the time vaults and stolen the deadliest weapon in the universe. Armageddon was imminent, and the General was sure. But in the shuddering chaos and falling masonry of Gallifrey's last surviving war room, he tried not to let it show in his face. Keep them focused, keep them fighting, he always said. But whether the end came from the Daleks massing in the sky, or the Doctor destroying Daleks and Time Lords alike, it would be here very soon. Not soon enough, he caught himself, muttering under his breath. So when Andragar approached him to say that there was another message from the Doctor, he barely felt a flicker of interest. "Are you sure the message is from him?" he asked. "Yes, sir," Andragar replied. The Under-Colonel had been in the disintegrating war room for so long, he looked like he was carved out of solid dust. "It's definitely the Doctor. What did he say? See for yourself." The General turned to see two words spread in shimmering holograms in the dust-filled air above the war room. He blinked in astonishment. "What's the mad fool talking about now?" Gallifrey stands flickered the holograms. "Gallifrey stands," he sighed. "What's he talking about? We've already fallen." "Hello," came a cheerful voice, filling the room. "Hello, Gallifrey High Command. This is the Doctor speaking." One of the screens fizzed, and there was a smiling, youthful face above a ludicrous choice of neckwear. "Hello, also the Doctor. Can you hear me?" On another one of the screens, another smiling young man. "Also the Doctor." And there he was, on another screen, the battered old warrior the General knew so well, with his leathery face and slitted eyes. Odd, thought the General. He didn't normally call himself the Doctor. "Standing ready," the old man said. The General felt himself leaning against the table. "Dear God," he said. "3 of them. All my worst nightmares at once." "Standing ready for what?" Andragar asked. "General, we have a plan," said one of the younger doctors. "In fairness," said the other one, "it is a fairly terrible plan, and almost certainly won't work." I was happy with fairly terrible. "Sorry, just thinking out loud." The old warrior was rolling his eyes. "Gentlemen, this is pressing. Can we get on with it?" "Sorry, Grandad," said one of the younger ones, adjusting his neckwear. "General, we are flying our 3 TARDISes into the upper atmosphere of Gallifrey. We're positioning ourselves at equidistant intervals around the globe." It was his turn to adjust his neckwear. "Equidistant, so grown up." "And we're just about ready to do it," said the old man. "Ready to do what?" There was a beat of silence, as if none of them wanted to say. It was the one with the ridiculous neckwear that spoke first. "General, we're going to freeze Gallifrey." "I'm sorry, what? You're what?" said the General. On the screen, Neckwear was holding something up so they could see it. A silver sphere. "I got my hands on one of these," he said. "Using this and our TARDISes, we're going to freeze Gallifrey in a single moment in time. You know, like those stasis cubes," said the old man. "A single moment in time held in its own pocket universe. Except we're going to do it to a whole planet, and all the people on it. The general looked around at the three faces, each alight with the confidence of madness. Even if that were possible, which it isn't, why would you do such a thing? Because the alternative is burning, said the old man. And I've seen that, said one of the younger ones. And I don't want to see it again, said Nekware. We'd be lost in another universe, alone forever, protested the general. We would have nothing. You would have a chance, said Nekware, and right now that is exactly what you don't have. The general was suddenly aware of everyone in the room staring at him, and there was something terrible on their faces. It was hope, he realized. Oh, Doctor, don't give them hope, don't be cruel. It's delusional, he said. It can't be done. To translate every detail of the whole planet, the entire population, it's impossible. My TARDIS could do it. Not in the time you have. The calculations alone would take hundreds of years. Oh, hundreds and hundreds, said the other young one. But don't worry. I started a very long time ago. Another voice was echoing around the room now. Calling the War Council of Gallifrey. This is the Doctor. I am on my final approach now. This is the Doctor. Another screen fizzed into life, and there was an old man with long white hair. Do you hear me? This is the Doctor. I have received your message, and I am here to assist. The general stared. He knew the face from centuries ago. The dark-haired child who claimed he lived in a barn. The adolescent who kept disappearing into the mountains. The student who had broken into the deepest level of the cloisters and never spoken of what he had seen. The young man who had stolen the moon and the president's wife. He looked older and sterner now, as if he was trying to appear respectable. But the general had remembered the crisis that ensued on the day that man fled Gallifrey. Not just because he had stolen a TARDIS, but because he had taken with him. That's the original, isn't it? Said Andrigar, cutting across his thoughts. The original! The Thirst Doctor! The general rolled his eyes. The Doctor had become an obsession of the military, and they all knew his faces by heart. Aloud he said, 4 of them, and sighed heavily. Commencing calculation, said the original Doctor. Andrigar was gripping the general's arm now. Do you see what he's done? Of course I bloody do, thought the general. He spread the workload across his timeline. He'll have time to do it. His TARDIS computer will have centuries to complete the calculation. He can do it! Listen to me. Please, listen. The general was now shouting at all 4 faces on the screens. Do you understand what translating the entire planet to another dimension will do? The havoc it will cause. The poles could switch. There will be earthquakes, tidal waves. We could lose half the population. We could lose everyone. I am aware of the dangers, said Nekware. I'll get to it later. Later? When's later? Calculation complete. Thank you, Doctor Number 1. Sorry, General, we're moving our TARDISes into position now. Translation will begin in 2 minutes. Brace yourselves. All 4 screens winked out. The General thumped his fist on the war table. Brace ourselves. How are we supposed to do that? He'll tear Gallifrey apart faster than the Daleks. He said he was going to do something later. There is no later, snapped the General. Then how about now? I suggested. Both men turned. It was the first time they'd noticed I was in the room, and they stared at me aghast. It might have been the eyebrows, they often had that effect. Doctor? Said Andrigar, while the General mumbled something about 5 of them. Sir, you can't be here, said Andrigar. Oh, do you think so? I said, mostly because it sounded really good in a Scottish accent. Well, that's bad news, because here I come. I glanced up and they followed my look. The large screen on the highest part of the wall was filled with a view of the sky above the capital. And now, towards, through the fire and the smoke, tiny blue objects were spinning towards us. I put the word out, I explained. Andrigar was staring at the whirling objects. What are those? But the general already knew. How many now? He asked faintly. Oh, hard to say, I replied. Loads. Lots. From all over my timeline. What is the collective noun for those anyway? How about a blizzard? Do we like blizzard? No one replied. They just stared upwards. Okay, to work. Gallifrey is going down the plug hole. And it's going to be a hell of a ride. I need a continuous live feed of every disaster area on the planet. I am literally all over this. For a moment they said nothing. They just stood and stared up as the war-torn skies of Gallifrey were filled with a blizzard of police telephone boxes. It took the better part of a day to translate the world of Gallifrey from one plane to another, and the general was right. The planet screamed and burned and raged. There was a town on the shore of Lake Callispa, ripped apart by a giant earthquake. No one should have survived, but everywhere people ran, they found a police telephone box standing in front of them, opening its doors. A tornado tore through a tiny village, till a ring of blue boxes spun around the storm in the opposite direction, shrinking it to the ground. As cities and towns and villages burned all over the planet, blue boxes came hurtling through the smoke, rescuing people from windows and rooftops. A sky transporter plunging towards the heart of the capital was suddenly being piloted by a funny man with big ears and a black jacket. Everyone on board stared out the windows as he climbed across the wing to rewire one of the engines. A ship on the high seas, about to collapse, was suddenly being captained by a strange little man in a black coat and checked trousers, who kept offering people gobstoppers and complaining about his aunt being giddy. There was a man with a ridiculous umbrella who rescued a school as a mountain crumbled towards it and kept everyone laughing as they ran. A gentle cricketer took command of a hospital on fire, rescued the patients and performed an operation as the flames licked at the theatre door. A man with a cloud of white hair and a swirled cape stood on a beach and with a silver rod froze a whole tsunami as it thundered towards the town. A laughing joker in a colourful coat led a party of miners out of the tunnel that had come crushed down around them. 4 children, trapped on the side of a mountain face, knew beyond hope that no one was coming to their rescue, until the end of an absurdly long scar dangled down in front of them. I was everywhere I needed to be that day, across all my lives, and I believe I've never run so fast. If I sound proud, forgive me. This was the inverse of the shame I carried for so many years. This was the last day of the Time War, and it was no longer the worst day of my life. Instead, it was the day the people of Gallifrey rose up and put 2.47 billion children to bed. This was the day I remembered who I was and swore never to forget. This was the day of the Doctor.